Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, everyone. In today's session, I am going to cover the innate immune response. The objectives are: define the innate immune response, describe the major components of the innate immunity and their functions. These include physical and chemical barriers, as well as cells and proteins of the innate immunity or innate immune response. Then I will describe how cells of the innate immune system recognize antigens and discriminate self from non-self. And the last objective is to describe the function of inflammation or the inflammatory response and its protective effects in the body. As I have said in the previous session, immunity or immune response is the ability of the human body to resist almost all types of organisms or toxins that tend to damage the tissues and organs. And the immune defenses of the body are classically subdivided into non-specific or innate immune response and specific, also called adaptive or acquired immune response. So immunity has an innate type and adaptive type. In today's session, I'm going to cover the innate or inborn immune response. Let's start now with the innate immunity or innate immune response. The innate immune response is present at birth. So we are born with that immunity. It is non-specific and non-adaptive. It includes our first line of external physical and chemical barriers provided by the skin and the mucous membranes. For example, part of our innate immune response is the ability of the nose to filter inhaled particles and the mucous membrane to act as a barrier that prevents against invasion by pathogens. Saliva contains lysozymes that can kill bacteria. The mucous membrane in the airways, with the help of mucus and cilia, can protect us or propel the pathogens outside the airways. The intact skin forms a physical barrier and houses normal microbiota that will compete with pathogenic bacteria, so it will prevent, or this microbiota will prevent the multiplication of the pathogenic bacteria on the skin. The eyelids have a mucous membrane that acts as a barrier or physical barrier, and also lysozyme is present in tears. The throat contains normal microbiota that compete with the pathogenic bacteria for the place. Acid in the stomach, the low pH, less than 2, can kill bacteria. Also, the normal microbiota in the large intestine compete with the pathogenic bacteria for the place where to survive. The low pH in urinary tract and the mechanical flushing will help in protecting against UTI and inflammation of the vagina. Here we can see a summary of the innate defenses. We can see that the epidermis of the skin forms a physical barrier, the mucous membrane acts a barrier, the mucus traps microbes, hair will filter out microbes and dust in the nose, and so on. In addition to the physical factors, there are also chemical factors like sebum that is produced from the sebaceous glands, lysozyme that is present in saliva and tears, the gastric juice, and the vaginal secretions. In addition to the physical and chemical barriers that we discussed in the previous slide, our non-specific innate immune response also includes various internal defenses such as antimicrobial substances, phagocytes, natural killer cells, inflammation, fever, interference, and complement system. As you can see here again, we have physical barriers that prevent, approach, and deny access to pathogens. We have the phagocytes, either fixed phagocytes or neutrophils in the blood, free phagocytes, eosinophils, and monocytes. The fixed macrophages are examples of fixed macrophages are those in the hepatic sinusoids, Kupffer cells, and the macrophages that are present in the alveoli. There is also the possibility of extracellular killing by the natural killer cells that approach abnormal cells and lyse those abnormal cells. The inflammatory response that we'll discuss later is also one of the internal defenses that are used by the innate immune response. Fever also one of the innate immune responses. Interferons that are chemicals. They increase resistance of the cells to infection, and they slow the spread of the disease. They are released by activated lymphocytes and macrophages and by virus-infected cells. Also, we have the complement system that attacks and breaks down cell walls and attracts phagocytes, as well as it stimulates inflammation. So complements, they are plasma proteins. They can attack the abnormal cells and cause their lysis. As you can see here, as I said, phagocytes, they remove debris and pathogens, and we have different cells that have the ability to undergo phagocytosis. The natural killer cells, they approach the abnormal cells and they cause their lysis by releasing substances that cause the lysis and death of the abnormal cells. Interferons, as I said, are chemicals released by activated lymphocytes and macrophages and virus-infected cells, and their role is to increase resistance of cells to infection, and they decrease or slow down the spread of the disease. Complements, as I said, they are proteins, plasma proteins. When activated, they break down cell walls, they attract phagocytes, and they stimulate inflammation. Phagocytosis is a non-specific process wherein neutrophils and macrophages from monocytes migrate to an infected area. So the phagocytes are attracted to the area with infection, and there they will do their action. There are 5 steps in phagocytosis. The first step is chemotaxis, or the attraction of the phagocyte to the site of infection. Then adherence. The phagocyte will adhere to the microbe, and then ingestion by phagocytosis, and then the digestion of the vesicle or the ingested vesicle by lysosomes, and finally the pathogen is killed. So there will be a residual body of indigestible material that will be kept inside the phagocyte or the macrophage, if we are talking about the macrophage. And this is a photo showing phagocyte ingesting a microbe, bacillus or rod-like bacterium. Fever is an abnormally high body temperature due to resetting of the hypothalamic thermostat, and you'll discuss the regulation of body temperature, and you will know more about the hypothalamic thermostat at the end of this course. It is a non-specific response that speeds up body reactions, increases the effect of endogenous antimicrobials, and sequester nutrients from microbes. So fever to some extent is beneficial part of the innate immune response and help us to overcome the infection or the invasion by the microbe. Inflammation is a defensive response of almost all body tissues to damage of any kind, either by infection, burns, cuts, and etc. The four characteristic signs of and symptoms of inflammation are redness, pain, heat, and swelling. It is a non-specific attempt to dispose of microbes and foreign materials, dilute toxins, and prepare for healing. So, inflammatory response has multiple effects, and these include blood flow is increased, phagocytes are activated, capillary permeability is increased, complement is activated, clotting reaction walls of regional temperature is increased, and specific defenses are activated. So we'll see redness due to dilatation of blood vessels, pain due to release of chemicals that induce pain, heat due to increased blood flow, and swelling due to increased permeability of the blood vessels at the site of inflammation. The inflammatory response has three basic stages. These are vasodilation and increased permeability, as we can see here. Blood vessels dilate, bringing increased blood flow to the injured area or injured site. The cause of inflammation here in this example is injury to the skin. The skin is torn and microbes entered through the wound, and there is the microbes release dissolved poisonous substances that will induce an inflammatory response. The second basic stage of inflammation is immigration, which is movement of phagocytes from the blood, here as we see, into the interstitial space and then to the site of damage. So they will move and migrate to the site of damage. Number 3, there will be tissue repair. The lymphatic drainage removes the dissolved poisonous substances for healing to occur. So the end result is the promotion of healing. Vasodilation allows more blood to flow to the damaged area, which helps remove toxins and debris. Increased permeability permits entrance of defensive proteins like antibodies and clotting factors to the site of injury. Other inflammatory mediators that are important in inflammation are histamine, kinins, prostaglandins, leukotrienes, and the complement factors. Immigration of phagocytes depends on chemotaxis, or the attraction of phagocytes to the site of injury. Neutrophils predominate in early stages, but they die off quickly. So the first line of defense against bacteria are neutrophils, then monocytes that need a bit longer time to arrive to the tissue or to the site of injury, will transform into macrophages and become more potent phagocytes than neutrophils. Pus is a mass of dead phagocytes and damaged tissue that is usually found at areas of intense inflammation. Pus formation occurs in most inflammatory responses and usually continues until the infection subsides. The inflammatory response is depicted in this graphic, as you can see here. There is damage or tissue damage, microbes will enter, and this will attract first the neutrophils, and then the neutrophils are short-lived, so this will be followed by the macrophages or the monocytes that will transform into macrophages, and both neutrophils and macrophages are able to undergo phagocytosis to eliminate the microbe. Edema results from increased permeability of blood vessels, as I explained earlier, and pain is a prime symptom, which results from sensitization of nerve endings by the inflammatory mediators or inflammatory chemicals that are released at the site of injury or at the site of inflammation. And here we can see a summary of the innate defenses. We have a second line of defense, and these are the internal defenses. The first line was the physical barriers like skin and mucous membrane and their related structures. The second line of defense are internal defenses like interferons that protect uninfected host cells from viral infection. Complement system causes cytolysis of microbes, promotes phagocytosis, and contributes to inflammation. Iron binding proteins, they inhibit the growth of certain bacteria by reducing the amount of iron that is available for those bacteria. Antimicrobial proteins have broad spectrum antimicrobial activities and attract dendritic cells and mast cells to the site of inflammation. We have another second line of defense is the natural killer cells. They kill infected target cells by releasing granules that contain perforin and granzymes. The phagocytes then kill the released microbes. Phagocytes, they ingest foreign particulate matter. Inflammation confines and destroys microbes and initiates tissue repair. Fever intensifies effects of interferons, inhibits growth of some microbes, and speeds up body reactions that aid repair. With this slide, we finish this part of the immune response, which was the innate immune response. In the coming lecture, we'll speak about the adaptive or acquired immune response. I will appreciate if you have any questions to send them by email, and see you next lecture. Thank you very much for your patience, and goodbye.